Hey everyone, it's Jay Harder, and I'm going to build a dashboard using Power BI and connect to coronavirus data on the web. And that data is going to be refreshed automatically daily. So I just wanted to go through this. This is my first foray into Power BI, and I think it's a really powerful tool. Has some great transformation features, and the visualizations are nice. So basically, I'm going to build this dashboard. There's not anything too earth-shattering here. I've got a map, I've got some slicers, a couple basic graphs, the ability to make some quick selections that interact with the other visualizations, and just some other ones, some line charts down here. So let me go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with a blank slate here. Okay, so I've just got a blank slate here. We've got a couple different tabs here, the report tab, the data tab, and the modeling tab. So on the data tab, I'm going to go over to get data. Before I do that, I just want to show you where I'm getting the data from. Okay, so I'm pulling data from this website. This is basically some Johns Hopkins University coronavirus data. And then down here, I'm going into that data set. There's daily reports, which have a CSV file for every day. This folder is a little bit more useful. It's got everything in one file for 3 different categories. So I am going to use all 3 of these files, but for now, I'm just going to use this CSV to start with. Now, if you link to this CSV, you don't really get what you might think. So you can't link to this. You'll actually get this more of this web page view. I want to get the data, so I'm going to click on this raw data, and that gives us a different type of link to link to the raw data. So if I copy that link, go back into Power BI, get data, and I'm going to get data from the web. Paste in my URL that I just copied. And right off the bat, it's already moved the data, recognizing that it's comma delimited. It puts them into columns, so that's great. One thing that I have to point out here is obviously the column headers are in that first row, so we're going to have to address that. Also, we've got a column for every single date, so all the way from 122 to the current date, 3/19. Notice we have 62 columns, but every day we'll get a new column. So that'll be important in a minute when we go through some transformations. I don't like the idea of having my dates in columns, so I'm going to transform that and make them, transform that into the rows. But for now, let's click on Transform Data. One other thing I want to note here is that if we look at Thailand, for example, you've got 2 cases of confirmed on 122, and then 3 on 123, and 5 on 124. So those are not new cases, those are cumulative cases. So that's also going to be something I want to change. I want to capture the new cases as well. So 122, the new cases would be 2, but 123, the new cases would be 1, because really the cumulative count is 3, so that must mean that there was 1 new case on 123. So that gets a little bit tricky, at least for me it was, but I'll show you how I tackled that. Let's go in here and start making some transformations. So you can see there's applied steps over here. This is a really nice feature of Power BI in the transformation section, where it goes through each step and tells you what it's done. So it's already made one transformation by identifying the type in each of these columns. So it recognized these as text. And that's fine. We're going to change it later. But first I want to transform some other things. So I'm going to make this first column, or first row, the column headers. So that's easy. We just say first row as headers. And it promotes headers there. And it also adds another change type. So it also recognized that, hey, this latitude and longitude, now that I've moved that to headers, I recognize that these are really decimals, and that's fine. Then I'm going to make all these date values. I'm going to transform them into into the rows. So I could really just click on all of those and unpivot the columns. But I think what I'd rather do is, because I'm going to get a new column every day, I'm going to click on everything except for those date values, and I'm going to say unpivot other columns. That way when we get a new column, it'll still work for that. All right. Now I am going to go back. If you remember, I said there were 62 columns. If we look at the source properties here, all that looks fine, but if you look at the details here, notice it says columns equals 62. So I thought I was all set, and the next day I refreshed my data and I didn't get the new dates of data. And what I realized is that it's hard coding the number of columns here. So it's never going to get that 63rd column on the next day. So what you really need to do is say columns is equal to null, and it will recognize the columns based on the amount of data that's there and the number of commas that are in there and so on. So let's click on that and see if it has any issues with that. It should stay exactly the same. If we go down to the last transformation we did, it seems like it's fine. And that way the next day's data, when it gets refreshed at midnight every night, we'll see that data is getting added here without us having to do anything. All right, so this column here, I'm just double clicking on that. I'm going to change that to date. I'm also going to right click and let's change the type to date. Over here, we've got a value. It's already designated as a whole number, and that's fine. That's what I want. All right, so we're looking pretty good. This province state, this is only populated some of the time, but I'm going to be using that field. I'll show you how a bit later. So I want it to populate that all the time, and if there's nothing there, if it's null, I want it to use the country and region. All right, so I'm going to add a column, conditional column. I'm going to call it what did they call it? Province state. I'll just call it province underscore state. So I'll say if that province or state is equal to null, then go ahead and use the country and region. Otherwise, go ahead and use the province and state. So if it's not null, just use this value. If it is null, then use the country. Now there is something goofy here that it doesn't really work, but you notice in the formula it's turned those double quotes into like 6 double quotes. So there's probably a better way to do it in the interface, but this is how I figured it out, and it works that way. So that seems to work fine. So that's that. Now, and I don't really need this column anymore. I'm going to remove it. I'm going to move the province and state over here to the right of country. And now I want to tackle this value field. If you recall, this 3, it's not really 3 new cases, it's 3 cumulative cases, but I want to know what the new cases are. It'll make our visualizations easier, so I can just sum up all the daily values. All right, so the way that there's probably a few ways to do that. I'm going to handle it by adding an index column, actually 2 index columns. I'm going to sort my columns first because that's going to be important to do. Make sure that the sorting is correct before I index the columns. So I'm going to sort by country and then sort by region and then sort by date. All right, so now that I've done that, now I want to add my indexes. In this one, I want to start from 1 and then do another one from 0. Okay, so now that I've done that, let me explain what I'm doing here. This date, 123, we can see that we have 0 here. Actually, let me find something more interesting. So on March 15th, we have 16. And that's referenced by index 54. Right? But if we want to see what was yesterday's value, we'd want to look at index 53. So in essence, this index 1 is going to represent the prior day. All right. And so what we'll want to do now in order to get the value for the prior day, we have to merge these queries. Well, there's only one query, but we're going to merge it with itself. All right. So I'm going to merge queries. So I'm going to merge this query with itself, and I'm going to use the prior day here and the index here. And I'm going to say left outer, so show everything from this first table and only the ones that match from the second table. And I've got all but one row matching, as you can see here, and that's because we have a 0 here that doesn't show up here. That makes sense. Now that I've done that, it's kind of like joining the table, and now you want to see which records, or rather which columns do you want to show from that table, from that second table. Well, all I really need is the value, but just to make sure it's working right, I like it to also see the country, state, and the date. And then I'm going to move this value field over next to this one just so I can compare the two a little easier. And this will be the prior. All right, and again down here, if we say 21 is the value, 16 is the prior day's value. That's correct. As you might be able to tell, now we can just do some quick math and say, well, let's just get the value minus prior value and create a new column. So that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to add a column, custom column, and we're going to say value, do a bracket value minus prior value. And that should give us what we want. I'm going to call this the daily value. All right. Okay. But there are a couple things we have to think about here. When we come to a new state or a new state, that's going to cause a little bit of an issue, right? This is the prior date. So this is the current date. So in essence, we've got a new state, and the math is doing exactly what we told it to do. It's saying, well, this is the prior record, and this is the current record. So 0 minus 22 is 22. So we don't want that. We don't want negative 22 for that first Albania record. We want 0. Or I guess more accurately, we want the value in this value field. So if they had 1 confirmed case on the 22nd, remember this is the 22nd, then we would want that to show in the daily value field. All right, so we can do that just by, I'm going to click on this little setting button there, and I'm going to say if province state is equal to the province state in that table we merged with. If those are the same, then everything's fine. Just do the value minus the prior value. Else, just use the value. So if it's different, just use the first value in that for that state. All right, so I believe that worked fine. I notice we do have some nulls here, so but the daily values seem to be fine for that. So I'm not worried about those nulls, especially for these columns, because I'm really going to get rid of these columns anyway now that I don't need them anymore. It's another nice thing about Power BI where you can just kind of clean things up. All the work has already been done for this custom formula, and so we don't need those columns anymore. And actually, I don't even need these columns anymore either. They're just kind of in the way. So that should take care of our data pretty good. One thing I need to do though is I'm gonna bring the deaths in and the recovered in. And then I'm going to join them all together. But before I do that, I want to create a category here, a new column. So I'm going to create a new column here. I'm going to call it category, and I'll call this one confirmed. Okay, and that's just like it looks. Everything just says confirmed. I'm going to save my work. It asks me if I want to apply all those changes. Sure, that's fine. Okay. So now that I've done that, I think we're in good shape. The only thing here is we want to make sure that I'm going to close and apply, make sure I don't get any errors first. So it's going to apply those changes. Okay, great. So that looks right. By the way, now we're out of the transformation screen and we're back into this data modeling screen. If I want to get back into the transformations, go to the home menu item and then click on transform data. And what I want to do is do exactly the same thing, but do it for those other two files. All right, but I don't want three separate files. That's not going to make my visualization very easy. I want one combined file. So I'm going to go back to transform, and there's a couple ways you can do this. You could create a new table in the modeling view, or you can append your queries. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to append as new. I did start by creating a new table, and it didn't quite work the way I expected. There were some issues with that. So I did it this way, and it worked a lot better. To get this data privacy information, and I'm not sure what that is about, but I'm going to continue there. There's nothing, there's no specific information in this visualization. There's no names, anything like that, just country and numbers. So now I have a file that should have everything in it. So if I look over here as the category, let's see. Let me close and apply first, see what happens. Okay, and if I look in my append, I've got confirmed, deaths, and recovered. Okay, that looks good. So at this point, we have the data that we need. I think we're in good shape as far as getting started on our visualization. I'm looking to build something like this. All right, so I'm going to go to my report tab, and let's just start with the title. And the way I do that is I just insert a text box, and I'm just going to call this COVID-19. And make that whatever you feel. All right. And then let's put some visualizations on here. Go ahead and start with the map. I'm going to click on this one, and let's make that a little bit bigger. I don't usually choose one of these things. I just modify the map by dragging things in. I'm going to go back here to make one other change here. If I click on the latitude here, okay, so what I was looking for is this data category. So this is latitude. You notice it kind of recognizes that it might be because based on the type of number it is, type of field. So yeah, that's latitude. And then you can see over here it's got the world symbol, the geography symbol next to it, and we'll make this longitude. You could probably do the same with the country. If you click on that and say this is country. I'm not really going to use that in my map anyway, but just to show you that you can do that. So that's fine. I'm going to go back into my report, and now, oh, you know what? I did something. What I meant to do is hide those other three tables, just so I don't get confused like I almost did. I'm going to hide that in report view, all three of those. I don't really need those anymore, at least not for the reporting. Okay, so I've got my latitude and longitude. Let's go ahead and put those obviously where they belong there. And okay, so I've got that. It's putting points on the map based on those two, but not based on any value. So we want a value in there. We want that daily value to be the size. And I could put the category as the color. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. A couple other things you can do here. I don't particularly like this layers thing. I think it just kind of gets in the way. So I'll turn that off. I also like to make that the full width of the screen. And so I think that looks nice just like that. We might play around with that a little bit later. And some of these can be a little tricky with dragging around. Okay, so let's put that there. Let's put a nice little separator here between the titles and the rest of the visualizations. So I can just insert a shape, a line, and it just gives you that vertical line. And rotation. Make it 90 degrees. And we'll put that over there. Let's make it a nicer color. All right. And I like to put some a slicer in here. So, and I'm going to have that be the category. So I'm just going to drag the category on top of there. I'm going to make that horizontal, and then it turns into like type of cards that you can click on. I think that's a better look. I'm going to put that up here. I'm going to move this down a little bit because I know I'm going to need a little more room. I'm going to put the a card for each category that represents the number. So what I want here is a card for confirmed, like the total number of confirmed cases, total deaths, and so on. And I could do that by dragging the daily value here and then changing the filter to be a category and say confirmed. So there's another way to do it. I mean, you could create a custom formula for that, and there's reasons you may want to do that, but for now, I think this is okay. I might gonna make that a little bit smaller. Okay, I think that's fine. So now that I've got everything the way I want it there, I'm just gonna copy and paste that. And of course, now I've got this filter already there. Copy and paste it again. Whoops. Try to get it all lined up. And the category here would be recovered. All right, so I think that's looking good. And by the way this slicer works, I can click on that and the map will update for confirmed. But you might notice that now these kind of look strange to see that they're blank. So I'm going to edit the interactions. And I'm going to move this out of the way for a second. So basically what I'm saying is when I click on this slicer, how do I want these other visualizations to react? Well, for these, I don't want anything to happen. For this one, it's fine. It's going to filter. So I'm going to try to put that up where it was. That looks about right. And now clicking on confirmed, it updates the map, but it doesn't update any of these numbers here. So I really want these to kind of stay static based on what I choose here. All right. So let's throw a couple of other things on here. I think it'd be useful to have a date filter, and maybe not a specific date, but a month year. It does create a hierarchy for you, but it doesn't really give me a month year. So I'm just going to create a new column. There could be a better way to do this, not sure, but I'm just going to create one called month year, and that's going to be equal to the month of, and if you just type in date here because that's the name of my field, it won't work because date is also kind of a reserved word. So I'm going to start typing the name of my table, COVID, and then find the date there. So now we're actually using the field in the table. So I want to get the month and then a dash and the year. Actually, I meant to say year month. So let's just start this over. I want to say year dash month. So it would be personal preference, I guess, but that's what I'm going to do. So in month of date And let's see how that looks. And since I already have this one created, I'm just going to copy and paste that. And instead of being category here, I'm going to use my new month year month. Unselect that. And by the way, if you don't want to see all these little filter deals, you can just go back to format and untoggle that. So I'm going to put this over here, maybe make it a little bit smaller. Now if I click on this, notice these numbers do update because every time you edit interactions, you're only editing it for the one that you selected. So I edited interactions for this, but I didn't do it for this. And I think it's actually okay that they're updating when I click on the month and the year. I think that is interesting. All right, so that's that. Let me create a bar chart. So for this one, just as a reminder, I'm going to create a chart by country and then daily value by date and category and so on. So that's really just a bar chart, but it's really a stacked bar because I want to show the category in there. You have to make sure you're not having something else selected at the time when you click this, otherwise it might change your visualization. So just click in a blank area, click on the chart, and then start adding items in. So I want the daily value in the value. I want the country region in the axis. And I really don't want to show everything, I just want to show the top 10. So for country region, I'm going to say top N, show the top 10 items based on that daily value. And then you have to click this apply filter. And then I'm going to make category part of that stacked bar. All right, I'm going to make that a bit smaller so we can fit some other things in there. Okay, great. Then let me just make a copy of that. And instead of the country now, I'm going to show the date. So I'm going to pull date over here as the axis. And notice here it's pulling in the entire hierarchy of dates. So it's pulling in 2020. And if you say, oh, well, I don't want these, it'll get rid of everything. It's a little bit funky, but if you hit the pull down and just choose date, that seemed to work for me. Also, notice I still have this top 10 by daily value in here, so that's going to make things a little bit goofy. So get rid of that. And we should be good to go there. Now if we click on one of these dates, it might be more interesting to show like a more recent period and say, well, what's happening more recently? Okay, what's happening with confirmed only cases? Say, okay, well, so it starts to become, you know, a way to tell the story now that you've got a lot of interactions going on. And then I want to add a couple other visualizations down here. My page size isn't quite ready to add some things. If you notice, I wanted to add some line charts, right? So if I try to add that, it doesn't let me go below this dotted line. So I'm going to go to my page size and say custom, and I'm just going to make this 1,000. And also, if you look at the page view here, I'm going to fit to width, but I'm not going to fit to page, just fit to width, not necessarily fit to height. So you might have to scroll a little bit to get to these down here and that's okay. I'll put this over here. So for this one, again, as a reminder, I'm going to create a line chart confirmed by date, deaths by date, and recovered by date. So for this one, I'm going to put in the daily value here, and the date, let's put that in the axis. And again, choose date. And I'm going to make that line color trying to remember how I data colors. Yes. And what you can do here is title. Let's just make that confirmed. I don't really need to say by date. It's kind of obvious. So I think everything's good here. Create another one. I've got some room here, so I'm going to spread these out a little bit. Actually, I'm going to change this size first. And then copy it. All right. Well, actually, I never set a filter on this one, so it should be category is confirmed. And this one should be category is deaths. And then for the last one, well, actually, let me change the title on this. All right, maybe I didn't have as much room as I thought I did. I could go in and look at the values, so the size and everything, and make it exact. But for now, I'm okay with this. So category here is going to be recovered, and change the title to recovered. And also change the data color, trying to keep it fairly consistent with what we have up here, which it's currently not, but let me make recovered be blue. And then if I look over here, if we say confirmed, it's yellow-ish. Deaths are here, recovered is blue. Same thing here. So then it starts to be a little bit more consistent. Now, getting the map that way can be done as well. But that one takes a little bit more effort. Just gonna, if I go to the map and you look at the layers again, you've got confirmed, recovered, and death, so it's not quite lined up the way. If you want to go into the map and change the colors, you can go into edit, and then first of all, I like this base map better. You can go into the theme. We're choosing size and color, so that's the theme. And then under symbol color or symbol style, you can choose the colors. So I've got confirmed, I've got recovered, that's fine, and deaths here. So back to report. Now it's a little bit more consistent. That blue color doesn't quite look the same as this blue color. So I could play around with that a little bit, but I'm not going to. All right. So I think that's it. Let me just see how that looks. So we've got a fairly interactive map, got some nice visualizations, and if I save that and come back tomorrow, all I really need to do is refresh the data, and then it's going to go through those transformations that we created, and it's already got the sources identified. It's going to pull this file every time you hit refresh, and it's going to update your data, create that combined table, and your visualization is going to update. All right, well, I'd appreciate anyone's comments. If there's better ways to do things, I'm open to your thoughts. So thanks for your time.